Hello, everyone. My name is Lexi, and this is a Sincerely Self podcast. I'm kind of nervy because my boyfriend's here watching me. I'm finally back to doing the YouTube videos because I did not do it for the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, because my ring light is really broken. And also, I got a haircut, and my haircut was really, really bad. It's a lot shorter, as you can see. It's also a lot lighter. Now it looks fine because I got it fixed, but it was a little bit longer and just super, super choppy, and I just hated it. Also, I have a Care Bear Halloween shirt that I found at TJ Maxx, and it's just about the best thing ever. But this week's episode, I didn't even really realize until 2 days ago that this was coming up, but it's 1 year since I started the podcast, which is so crazy to me because, well, I guess I didn't do it for 5 months. So, but technically it's 1 year since I did the podcast. It is 1 year from the day that I'm going to be posting this because it's actually 1 year on the 19th. And I'm not posting this on the 19th. I'm actually recording this on the 19th. So, I wanted to do this week's episode on just kind of what I've learned in the last year, kind of reiterate why I made this podcast and when I made this podcast, because I think the story of when I made this podcast is kind of crazy. And I've talked about it in one episode, maybe two, where I explained when I came up with Sincerely Self and all of that. So I kind of wanted to just reiterate that and talk about it again. So, first, we're going to talk about how I made Sincerely Self. So, I made Sincerely Self. I came up with the idea in June of 2023, maybe May of 2023, because all of my friends were telling me that I should make a podcast or something because I would always give advice. And I was like, maybe, I don't know. I was super nervous. And then at the beginning of the year, that point in time, I guess it's kind of the middle of the year, my life just got started falling apart. Everything that I thought I was going to do, I was going to go to school to be a special education teacher, and that was my plan. I was working in the schools, and then I had a school year where I was just super burnt out, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do this for my career. I was super in debt from just that semester, and I was like, I don't know if I want to get more in debt just to do this, and not even, I don't know. Everyone has their own things with that, but that's where I kind of got to with that. And I was just not getting paid enough doing the job that I was doing. I had two jobs, and my rent at the time was $900, which for some people is not a lot. For me, it was a lot. And so I was always using all my money on my rent. And I got to the point where I had to move out and I had to move back home. And I literally did not know what I was going to do with myself. And then I had been writing affirmations and everything. That first affirmation that I did was that I was going to make $10,000. That was the first one. And I had no idea how I was going to make $10,000 because I literally had I was running into getting negative balances in my account. And so I started writing affirmations about that I had $10,000, and I just started focusing more on me and improving my mental health instead of worrying about how I was going to make more money and how I was going to get out of this rut. And then randomly, my friend Taylor one day was like, she's from North Dakota. Her parents own a company in the oil rig. And she was like, I'm going to go back to North Dakota and work in the oil rig for the summer. And she invited our whole friend group. And me and one other girl were like, we're down. And she was like, when she proposed the idea, she was like, you could make $10,000. And for me, that was kind of what solidified it for me, because I was like, that's the exact amount that I wanted to make this summer. And so I agreed to go to North Dakota and work in the oil rig for 2 months. And that was really scary for me. Obviously, it wasn't a job that I was passionate about by any means. And I was super scared. It was manual labor. I was just working with kids. I'd never done anything like that. And while I'm in North Dakota, I'm thinking about doing this podcast, and I meet Taylor's mom, who she actually has a podcast of her own. I will link it in the description of this video because her podcast is amazing. And she's a life coach, which is what I started thinking that I should do. And so I moved to North Dakota. I'm doing this job, and I'm getting really close with Taylor's mom, who's a life coach, and she was starting her podcast at that time. And learning from her and speaking with her really, really just motivated me to start mine. And she kind of told me the tips and tricks of like how she was starting hers. And me and Taylor would sit and talk about it at work for hours about me just doing this. She helped me come up with the name Sincerely Self. She helped me create the first like logo that I had for it. And we created it like while we were working the oil rig. And then when I got home, like I got home at the end of August. So like 3 weeks after I got home, I recorded the first episode and I posted it. And then I just started doing it and it was amazing. And I literally don't think I ever really would have gotten the courage to start the podcast if I didn't go through that super low point where I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I just trusted and let everything kind of fall into place, because I definitely did not get the $10,000 how I thought I was going to, and I did not start the podcast how I thought I was going to. And so that's how Sincerely Self came to be. And I have just always made it a testament through making this that when you're at your lowest point, that's right when like the best things are about to happen to you. Because multiple times I've experienced when I've gone through a super low, then the best opportunity comes after. And that's literally how I felt with that. I got a really, really good opportunity, not in the way I would have thought, and it helped me get to the next level. And so that's what I like to talk about with Sincerely Self, and that's kind of why I made it. And it's called Sincerely Self because it's like a love letter to yourself. Because I really, really got into self-improvement and self-care, and it really improved my self-esteem and how I viewed myself. And since I studied and I went to therapy for a little bit and I learned all these techniques, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to share them with other people because maybe they're in the same rut I was in before. And kind of the biggest thing that came from the podcast and like kind of what made me keep doing it was I remember when I first started posting episodes. Because another reason I started doing it was because I was like, maybe there's more people out there that like feel the same way that I do and feel like there's no one talking about it. And so the biggest reason I posted it was for people to realize they're not alone in certain things. I also posted a TikTok and I was like sobbing in my car. And I was just talking about how you have to let things fall apart before they can fall back together. And I got like positive feedback on that from me just being really authentic and open. And so from those experiences, it really motivated me to keep going. I remember people like from my town like coming up to me, like mutual friends, and just telling me like I really liked your podcast. People would message me and tell me that it really helped them or that certain things helped them. And the more that I kept doing it, the more that like I had people telling me that it helped them. And that was like the coolest thing ever. And I still have that. And I think that's probably the best thing about doing this is hearing people tell me that it's helped them. So I want to kind of talk about how I've grown since I started Sincerely Self, because I started Sincerely Self when I was 21 and just at a super different place in life, and definitely, you know, healing and everything. And I think some of the biggest takeaways I've had from this year since I started, just in my life in general, is that it doesn't matter how many times you think you've healed, like you're always healing is not just linear. Like it never ends. I think it gets good and it gets bad. And that's how it's always going to be, a balance of like the good and the bad. And I think part of me wanted to convince myself at the period of my life that I was in when I kind of started this, like last year, that, oh, okay, I healed, like I'm in a good spot and it's just always going to stay in a good spot. But then through this last year, like I've gone through low points where I really, really questioned my purpose because I had already gone through that. And so when I was going through it again, I'm like, how, like, am I ever going to figure out what I'm supposed to do? And for me, like I was just in an environment a lot of this year where I did not feel the most myself. I wasn't able to do the things that really fulfilled me that I had taught myself. Like I wasn't using the mechanisms that I taught myself. And so my healing, like it wasn't really happening. I was really digressing. And I was changing into a different person that like I didn't really like. I was pretty negative and I was just very depressed, and depression never goes away. It always comes in waves, and that's a whole other thing. But I really just kind of forgot who I was for a while there. And so I remember I had a time when I was like kind of talking about self improvement and like really just how you can change your life from the way you think, and affirmations and like my bread and butter. And I talked about it, and I just felt so alive again, and I felt so me again. And it kind of like slapped me back to reality of like, okay, I do know what my purpose is. I do know what I'm supposed to do, and it's okay to like lose that for a little bit and feel uncertain. And so moving forward, I really want to become licensed to be a life coach. That's really the thing that I've thought about for a couple years now, but I really just want to do it. And so I think that's kind of the next step that I'm going to take. And I learned from the rough patch that I went through that I will always learn more like coping mechanisms to move past it. I think that's the best thing to remember when you're in a bad spot, is that I've been in a bad spot before and I got out of it. And so I can get out of this bad spot too and go into something better. And so I've just kind of had that realization over the last year. That is a big reason why I didn't do the podcast for a few months, because I was questioning my purpose and my identity and everything like that. The next thing that I kind of want to talk about, because September is Suicide Awareness Month, is the depression aspect. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of vulnerable things about it that I feel like not a lot of people talk about. A lot of people are like, oh, well, just it'll be okay. Everything's going to be okay. But sometimes you get in moments when you have severe depression where it does not feel like everything is going to be okay. It does not feel like you're going to be able to move past it. And I guess I just want to say that to like let you know, if you're feeling that way, that you're not alone, and a lot more people feel that way than you would think. And just try and remind yourself that like everything happens for a reason. So there's a reason that you're here, and you'll find that reason, because there's a lot of things that I would have not done if I would have listened to my thoughts when I was at a bad spot like 2 years ago. There's so many things that I would have not done. So that's just something to think about. And if you know somebody who is struggling this month, just really, really, especially this month, just really, really be conscious of that and be reaching out to people. Okay, last thing that I'm going to talk about in this episode is just, I feel like this would be a good one to kind of talk about the future of the podcast, kind of what I want to start doing, and just where I want to go from here. I really, really want to keep Fridays as the day that I post. I want to do more podcasts with other people. I have one that I'm super excited about that I'm doing next month. I actually have a couple next month, and so I'm super excited for that. Also, I want to do more on the YouTube. When I first started the podcast, I was good at doing the YouTube. I did it every single week, and the YouTube was actually doing good, and then I quit for 5 months. And now I've just not been taking the time to do it. So that's something I want to get better at moving forward, is doing more of the YouTube. That will be it for this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. It's been a fun 1 year. You guys should go back and listen to the first episode. I think I might link that on my Instagram tomorrow. The very, very first episode of the podcast. That one was a good one. That one I don't think there's a YouTube video for. I think I just recorded that one. So I will link that if you're not following Instagram for the podcast. It is linked in my link tree. I post my link tree anytime I post the podcast, wherever I do. So you can find the Instagram there. And yeah, this will be available on YouTube as well. So you should go and check that out, because I have not been posting YouTube. And I also changed my hair. And I also showed my Care Bear sweatshirt. So you have to go and see it. and I'll see you guys next week.